Danielle. I'm currently a registrar, but I did this project along with Dr. Randalls while I was a simulation teaching fellow in County Durham and Darlington Trust. As a bit of a background, this project was based on recruiting Band 6 nurse practitioners for our Acute Intervention Team. This was a new team that was going to be introduced to the Trust with the aim of early recognition and detection of deteriorating patients, and then the Acute Intervention Team was going to support junior doctors outside of clinical hours in terms of recognising acutely unwell patients and communicating and escalating them to senior doctors. It was aimed that they would, the healthcare team would perform clinical tasks such as taking blood cultures, getting sepsis 6 started, while the Band 6 nurse would perform an ATWE assessment alongside the junior doctor on call. So we wanted to pick the best people possible for these Band 6 nurse practitioners. They would be working in quite a high pressure environment, seeing a lot of acutely unwell people, and also having to work within a team with a junior doctor and a healthcare. The non-technical skills need to be on point. So we thought a traditional interview just wasn't going to cut it, because the problems we foresaw with traditional interview are you can say what you would do or should do in a situation, but really we've got no demonstrable evidence there in front of us. So what we hypothesised, our hypothesis was that by adding in a high fidelity simulation alongside a traditional interview would hopefully predict those candidates that would be the best and have the greatest attitude for this role. So a bit of background with regards to, we looked at how has simulation been used in recruitment previously. So we looked at Gale in 2010 using simulation as part of an assessment centre, which is now used in several specialty interviews, where you have an interview, simulation, as well as your portfolio review, in order to get a wider range of your skills. And what we wanted to know is what part additional benefit did that simulation add. We looked at by Boyce, who looked at the benefits of workplace simulations with regard as opposed to traditional interview, and they found that simulation reduced the chance of people faking or just giving socially desirable responses as opposed to what their actual skill set is. And they looked in a variety of backgrounds, not just healthcare, but and from entry level to managerial positions in different areas. Then Levens et al. In 2011 also we looked at, does this really need to be high fidelity, or can we get away with doing a low fidelity solution to see how people would respond in a given situation? And that gave rise to the SJT, situational judgment test. But they found that there was incremental validity, especially when assessing those non-technical skills, of using a high fidelity versus a low fidelity option. And also there's further scope here that actually giving a candidate an opportunity to do a high fidelity test run of their future job may also say to them, am I capable of doing this? If this is a preview is what's to come. So in order to get the best response, so based on behavioural theory, but by giving the most authentic stimulus, we would expect to get the best predictor of future behaviour. So we used our simulation suite with immersive technology, and we used the equipment and tried to increase the psychological fidelity to ensure that the behaviours that they exhibited in the simulation would be more predictive of what they would do if they were a band 6 nurse in the acute intervention team. The simulation was a sepsis scenario, and in order to reduce the impact of people being scared of the simulation environment and freaking out, basically, everyone in the simulation was going to be part of the interview. They had an introduction to the simulation suite, and as this was a relatively untested simulation, we included it as 25% of the overall score. And out of 27 candidates, 10 candidates were to be recruited. So we built an objective marking scheme for 2 independent markers watched the simulation, and there were various categories. So the first one was information gathering, collecting the information in the room, then recognising the patient has sepsis and initiating sepsis 6. So this is a knowledge-based procedural knowledge that we're assessing here. Then is that are they able to escalate and recognise the fact that they may potentially maybe out of their depth and need more assistance, and they were to do an SBAR handover on the phone. And then this area is the most important bit, because this is the bit that can really only be captured by the high fidelity simulation, and this is our non-technical skills. And this was aligned with the advanced non-technical skills. So out of the 10 successful candidates, we then followed them up over a 6-month period to see who performed best in the role and whether there's any correlation between their score in interview and how they performed in role. And as a surrogate marker of how well they're performing, we looked at the number of tasks and number of acute clinical readings they performed over the 6-month period. This was corrected for any long periods of absence or less than full-time working. And we then also looked at 12 months, if they were still, if they had left the post, where did they go? So our results. So our traditional interview score versus the number of tasks completed showed quite a poor correlation between the performance. So our highest score at a traditional interview actually was a middling performer in terms of number of tasks completed. Then we moved to our simulation score. That was a lovely, we were really impressed by this linear correlation between our lowest simulation scores, completed the least amount of tasks, and our highest performer was the most efficient. We then thought, is that person performing the most tasks actually doing a lot of low-level skill tasks that actually should be delegated to the healthcare assistant, or actually is the person performing the least amount of tasks actually doing the really complicated work? So we looked at the acute deteriorating patient reviews, deemed to be the most highly skilled task, and what would probably take the most time, and we still had our correlation. We then looked at the combined score, and we still see a correlation, but actually it's not as clear-cut as our simulation score. Then we looked at who had left the post at 12 months, and the candidate who had the lowest simulation score actually returned to their previous band 5 post, and our candidate who performed the best in simulation was subsequently headhunted and promoted to a band 7 post. So what we conclude is that a standardised simulation scenario may have great predictive validity of subsequent work performance in a traditional subsequent interview. I'm just going to come on to our limitations. This was a small number of candidates, and actually we're unable to say those 17 people who didn't get the job how they would have performed, but we can only work with follow the 10 that we hired. And also, as you saw, there was a little bit of middle marking going on by the independent markers. The majority of people got middle-ish scores in the simulation. Unfortunately, we'd like to go back and remark the videos, but they're not available to us. That would have been great. That's it.
Yes.